It's the old Doctor Who show, episode number 81, Seeds of Doom. Ooh, a garden of evil.
Go forward in all your beliefs and prove to me that I am not mistaken in mine. You couldn't control my mind before, and you certainly can't control it now.
Would you like a jelly, baby?
The TARDIS, when working properly, is capable of many amazing things.
Reverse the polarity of the neutron flows with the TARDIS will be free of the force field.
But the TARDIS is more than a machine. It's divinity, but a person.
The resulting reaction is Are you ready?
Welcome back to the old Doctor Who show, your tri-weekly classic Doctor Who review podcast. Switching it up for Dan, making Dan
doing
happy.
it right,
Yeah.
making the world go round right here.
Hey man,
Hey, Eric.
how have you been, Dan? It's been only 7 days.
This is ridiculous for us to see each other again so soon.
Yeah,
but in podcast world, it's been an excruciating 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's fine. You're going to hear this late. We will be farther in time than we are now.
Yeah,
to
so
each
we're time
other.
traveling right now.
Yeah, Dan and I are
podcasts.
closer in time to each other than the versions of Dan and Eric you've grown to love.
Yeah.
Speaking of growing to love.
Okay.
Should we adopt a baby? No.
That'll save our marriage.
Should we get into it? Do you have anything? I'm just tired.
We said this last time. You and I are both away when we normally record this. So we're recording this on a Monday evening.
Yeah, so apologies
And
to people.
The energy's going to be super high, folks.
Yeah,
we
I'm ready to go, though.
Went from a 7-parter in the last 7-parter. No, Inferno was 25 parts. Inferno's 25 parts.
Weird. Okay, hold on. Pump
What?
the brakes.
Okay.
I didn't look at the next episode. So
Don't.
This could break what got set up. But we were talking about weird coincidences and all of a sudden Enemy of the World matched up with Inferno. But the episodes have gone 8, 7, 6. So I'm hoping that our next story is a 5-parter. I don't think there exists a 5-parter in Doctor Who world, but if it is, I hope it's what we do next.
Well, the next one's Kinda.
It should be a 5-parter.
Hang on.
If it is, I think
it's a
double
4-parter.
Suicide? We lost it.
4-parter.
But we did go 8, 7, 6. So that was
You
kind
can
of
watch the 3rd episode twice.
if you want to.
If you wanted to.
Why do you watch the 3rd episode twice?
Why not? That makes it 5 parts. No, it could
I
be the
see what
first
you're doing.
episode.
You're playing with math.
Yeah,
And,
no,
you
it's
can't
a
do
numbers
that.
game, man. That's how we make our money.
That's black
through
magic.
volume.
So let's just hit that button. Unless you have
All right.
something to add. I certainly don't. I would like to tend to my garden with you and plant my seeds of doom.
I don't want to know what that's a euphemism for.
I hope everyone watched Seeds of Doom because there's also a Seeds of Death, which we're also, I think, reviewing. But I had a mini heart attack when I was starting to watch Seeds of Doom, and I was like, oh, God, am I watching the wrong one? And I was going to have to watch the Seeds of Death. But it's not Seeds of Death, it's Seeds of Doom.
Doom of Death.
Doom of Death.
Ready to
Hand
go.
of Doom.
Hit that button.
Hand of Penetration.
Wait, no, that was the last
That was
one.
last week.
Last week was
or
Penetration.
3 weeks ago. You hit the button, Dan.
Hitting it.
Some visitors, Mr. Chase. Sir, the meddling doctor. You lead a charmed life. You arrive without a chauffeur, not even a touch of frostbite.
How do you do? Have you met Miss Smith? She's my best friend.
Is she? And still beautifully intact, I see.
I try my best under the circumstances.
And this is Mr. Scorby. I don't know his first name. And these two gentlemen...
Yes, thank you, Doctor. We are acquainted.
How nice. Hand over the pod.
This was still is.
Was,
this
both.
is Seeds of Doom. This is the 6th and final serial of 13th season, lucky number 13. It was written by Robert Banks Stewart, 3 names, gotta be good. Script editor at this times was Robert Holmes, pour one out, because that's why it's so good. Oh wait, I guess I played my hand too early. Directed by Douglas Camfield of the Camtown Camfields. And Ant Arden... Sometimes I am so dumb that it makes me so happy. And Antarctic science, I'm having so much trouble. In the Antarctic Science Station discovers alien plant life and grizzled beards. The Doctor and Sarah Jane are sent to investigate. Meanwhile, an eccentric millionaire playboy with a penchant for synth-heavy post-punk and plants sends his hired goon and a rogue botanist to snatch the pod from the Doctor's grasp. Unfortunately, for everyone involved, these plants turn you into giant plant monsters, and that's exactly what happens. Dan, what did you think? What did you think of the seeds?
What did I think of your synopsis? I really enjoyed this story. I thought this was such a good Tom Baker story. Again, I want to reiterate how much I love that we decided to alternate doctors as we're going forward here.
Yeah, that was from a listener, and we should give you props. I don't remember who you are. It was someone in the live show.
And the live show said, why don't we just alternate? And we said, we're stealing that idea. Because now we get to see Tom Baker, and I haven't seen him in a long time, old Tom. And this felt like such a good Tom Baker story. He had a wonderful performance the whole way through. He got to be an action star. He got to have his witty banter with Sarah, which is such a great combination. Obviously, one of the classic Who pairings, in my estimation, is the two of those folks together. A lot of wordplay. It wasn't quite as silly as some of his stuff has been in the past, some of the other stories that we've seen. But overall, I really enjoyed it. Especially some of the supporting performances I enjoyed quite a lot. We can dive into that as we go. But yeah, overall, a solid story. Eric, I think I already know what you think of this story.
Yeah, I love this. This is probably one of my favorite Doctor Who stories of all of the Doctor Who stories.
What?
Well, I would say, like, if I was ever unsure who my favorite Doctor was, which I don't think I've ever really been unsure, but if I've ever wavered, like, this was just a constant reminder of how much I love Tom Baker. Like, it's funny, it's exciting, it's 6 parts, and to be honest with you, it's perfectly 6 parts. It's got like this nice prologue of like these first 2 episodes make up pretty much their own story. The back half works beautifully. It's some of the best chemistry, I think, and I'm also a huge fan of this is my favorite period, this 70s period, where Robert Holmes is the script editor, and we're just coming off of the story before this was The Brain of Morbius, and I love all of the horror nature to it. The story has a lot of stuff going on. It starts off, it feels like almost like The Thing. You've got this, it's like frozen, and there's an alien, and it's it's everywhere. But then you also have them solving a weird crime that doesn't really need to be, so not a crime, but they're doing like detective work. Because at one point, like the hired goon that is driving the limo leaves $1 million painting in the trunk of the car, which they then use to identify the artist who drew it, who I'm assuming is a famous actress of some kind, and people in the UK would be like, oh, that's so-and-so, that's why she's in it. Because they do this detour and go to her house just to find out. That's how they make the connection to the millionaire later on. But I loved all of the stuff that they're looking and they're figuring it out. And Sarah Jane is the best companion, and Tom Baker is the best Doctor. And both of them together, and they feed off of each other, and she's just as good as him. And I'm going all over the place, but one of the things I really like about her is she completely has her own agency, and she knows what she's doing, and she's sort of like a Lois Lane type, because I think she's a reporter, right? That's her backstory from what I remember. She was a reporter. But she also does fear so well. Like, when she's afraid for her life, you feel it, but she doesn't fall apart. Like when she's challenged and when she's stressed out, she stands up and she does these things. But it's not like she feels overpowered, and she shouldn't be, because there's like all this weird shit going on. But she's so good at that, of like mining that area between like confidence and being scared. But like, she's just perfect. She's perfect. And the villains are all great. I love the svelte millionaire weirdo guy with his plant collection, and he reminded me a lot of the millionaire weirdo guy from City of Death, who was trying to steal that's where the seeds come from. I imagine the seeds of doom are coming from the City of Death or something. But I don't know. God, I loved it. I really like the whole way through.
I'm starting to like it even more now that you're talking about it. No, I agree with all of that. Sarah Jane and the Fourth Doctor together are probably my favorite pairing ever. And she just has so much to do throughout the entire story. Now there are problems. They do have the.
There are probably not any problems. Dan, you have a scene.
What I meant to see is there are opportunities, not problems.
You have a scene where the Doctor has a gun to him, like when he meets the heavies, and he just says, "This is my what does he say? He says, "This is Sarah Jane. She's my best friend." Oh no, have you met Miss Smith? She's my best friend.
Does he say that?
He does.
Does he really?
He does. He's so great at doing the opposite behavior of what you would expect. So when he's in trouble, he's saying these random facts, or he does that scene where he's introducing everyone. He goes, have you met Miss Smith? She's my best friend. Then he starts introducing the thugs behind him with the gun. That guy so and so, but I don't know his last name. And then other times he'll get a gun put to his head, and at that point he should be scared, and that's when he starts threatening them. He does the opposite, but it just works. And I'm sorry to cut you off. Tell me about the problems with this perfect story.
I take it all back. There were no problems with the story. It was perfect. No, with Sarah Jane, one of the things that happens quite often in a Doctor Who story, especially one that is more than 4 parts, is you have this back and forth. Sarah gets captured, she escapes, she gets captured again. But in this case, every moment through that was so exciting that when she gets caught, I believe it's the second time, and the Doctor has to save her by crashing through the glass roof of the laboratory. Yeah. I said laboratory. Who am I? Of the laboratory down and saves her just in the nick of time as the plant is opening up and is going to infect her. That was super fun. I really enjoyed that. I loved. So it is in several different parts. The first 2 did feel fairly self-contained and awesome in their own way.
Yeah, that was a great
claustrophobic nature of being inside the Antarctic station when most of the people are gone. So it's both tight quarters but also somewhat abandoned in a way.
Right, and they did a lot of. We talked about how much we liked Inferno for the sound design. They do a lot with this too. You hear the wind, you hear all these things, and then on top of that, they have that video effect of the snow, which was really. I thought it was great. I mean, you can tell obviously that it's an effect, but I was losing myself in it.
But it was an effective effect.
It was an effective effect. It was just really well put together, and I really like the characterization of those 3 scientists. They portrayed one of them almost as not a villain, but he's let's just mess with this pod. The Doctor's coming. He's just going to take credit for him. And you're okay, they're setting him up to be a villain. But he isn't. He's just a human being who would act like that when you're
But he also seemed to be somewhat maybe under the spell of the pod because he could feel that there was a life force in it. So there was something eerie going on, which is kind of cool.
It was cool that you bring that up because that also ties in later where the plants, the creature takes over the billionaire.
All the plant life.
Yeah.
The what? Sorry, I had to also look up that line, and you're absolutely right.
Yes, that was that. This is a really funny script, and not even in a funny, ironic way, or it's. I found it to be
in a silly way. It's not in a silly way, which I love. Like a Douglas Adams script can be silly. This is not silly. It's just it's funny.
It's funny and absurd in a great way. I loved it.
I'm sorry, what you say?
I was saying, and it's absurd in a lot of ways, but without being stupid.
Right.
I don't know. Go on. Nothing important. I'm just happy about it.
His tail is practically wagging. So I mean, that's to say, there's not really problems with it. Those moments that you tend to see in a Doctor Who story that go on a bit too long, or some stories which can go on a bit too long, may have happened to this, but it didn't feel like it was taking away from the story as a whole.
Yeah.
We had so many interesting additional characters in this. There were a lot of of characters that had a lot to do. Sometimes these stories center around just a few, and then there's all these extraneous characters. There was a lot of people in this.
And everybody
all the way
had,
down.
Right, everybody had purpose.
Had motivation, had purpose. They were serving the plot from the very beginning. We had Dunbar, who is working with the World Ecology something. We should look these up, guys. We don't do our homework. But he was kind of being a double agent. So he found out that this Antarctic survey team had found the pods, and then immediately
he's going to sell it to
Harrison Chase and offer to sell it to him. But then he also has a redemption kind of story.
He does.
He realizes how horrible this was, and he offers to go back in and save Sarah the doctor.
And he gets eaten alive by the giant plant monster. R.I.P.
So that happens.
But you're right. Like
everybody
had purpose. Like in thinking about Inferno, I was complaining about Sir
Ian McKellen.
No, I like him. I'm not going to complain about him.
I don't know why you were. It was
Magneto
a very
and Gandalf. No, the guy that was like the bureaucrat,
Sir Kevin,
that I felt like couldn't get anything done. Right,
it
was the
Sir
guy
Kevin.
that they fake has it. Whatever.
Kev.
There's no character like this. Even the renegade botanist character, who's sort of trying to say the right thing, becomes the main villain, or becomes.
Love Keeler. I loved his performance.
He was great.
When we go to, so he's just a regular. Like we see him at the beginning with Harrison Chase. The you said playboy. He is by no means a playboy, but
Did you
millionaire.
hear him jamming out with that whole music scene where he's like, "My flowers like to listen to music," and then he's playing like it was like Gary Newman's house. Like I imagine like at some point. Like he had to and Tom Baker has that great line where he whispers to Sarah Jane, like, "I don't like the music," and she's like, "What?" And then he says it out loud. I don't know if it's "I don't like the music." It's probably something funnier than that. But when he says it out loud, it's just awesome. All right, go on.
You're such a huge fan of this.
I'm such a fanboy.
I love this. This is great.
Tom Baker.
What was I saying? Oh, so Keeler. Keeler starts off, and he's just some henchman. So you have Keeler and the other guy, the main one, Scorby.
Right, who is fantastic.
The two of them, and they could have been two interchangeable heavies. But when they get to the Antarctic station and they have the ruse that they were pilots and their plane crash and they stay there, it becomes clear that Scorby's the real bad guy and is planning to kill everybody in order to steal the pod. And the agony that you see on Keeler as he's trying to come to terms with what he's going to have to do and wrestle with the fact that if I don't do this, I'm going to get killed. So much happens in that scene. Yeah. And he ends up being a bigger part because he becomes a plant monster, but he didn't need to be, but they gave a meaty part to a really competent actor. And that was the whole way through. Even, Amelia Ducat. She pronounces it differently than everyone else does, but whatever. The painter, she had so much to do. I looked at her IMDb while you said maybe she was someone that was recognizable. Maybe she was. She has a huge list of credits, but nothing that we would necessarily associate.
No, but
her
I
with.
mean the people
of
the time would know who she was.
She was amazing. She was just so.
No,
funny.
She was great, and she becomes.
So funny.
She starts out as sort of a comedy thing, because.
Yes.
She's like, I don't remember who I sold it to or whatever. And that part was funny, too, where they ask about the painting, and she's like, it's the one I'm not done with it yet. She forgets which ones they're talking about, whatever. But then she comes back as a secret agent for UNIT.
Right.
Which was like not
so
really
awesome.
Expecting it, but it worked. It was fun.
And then she offers her services if they ever need her again. Like, she was really just charming the whole way through. So you had them. You had, I guess just the whole way down. I mean, how do you want to...
You could pick anybody in this story, and there was no reason to cut them. They all had a reason for being there. I will say, there was... is it Hargreaves?
Yes.
He's the only one. The older... the not the main villain.
The butler.
He was
the butler.
Maybe you didn't need him.
But you needed that sort of role.
It was good, yeah. Like
he was fine.
It was fine. I mean, he's the only one that didn't really have
much to do
of an arc or anything. But that's a nitpick. I wouldn't. He was great as an actor.
It was kind of showing. He was showing that Chase had people in his employ that would do anything that he says, and you see that Keeler's been infected, and Hargreaves, the butler, is just going along with it.
That was
He
a great
the
scene.
The master says, okay, put him in the cottage, we're going to feed him. And this guy's obviously dying, and he's being covered in, turning into plant matter, and the guy's just doing what he's told until he has a moment where he freaks out because this thing's going to get loose. So he even has this moment of terror. So he has more to do than just being some butler.
That particular scene was really good where he's pleading for his life, like, you got to get me to the hospital.
Right.
And then you look over at Hargreaves and you think, okay, he's going to stand up and
have a conscience.
And he's like, no, you got to listen. And it's like, oh God, you're with snakes, my friend, plant snakes.
Yup. Plants.
And it also turned into like we had a very 007 Bond thing going on again with the compost machine.
Okay, that was the other thing.
And I'm going to set a timer and leave, and nobody's going to watch and make sure whatever. That's all.
So yeah, there were those moments. We have when they get captured initially at Chase's home. He decides, well, I'm going to kill you anyway, so I might as well take you on a tour of the entire place, and that's when he has the private concert for them. That's kind of ridiculous. The fact that they go back to the composter at least 3 different times. One time successfully kills a soldier.
Yeah,
the other times,
right?
The other time, Tom's in there. Sarah's in there once, and then eventually, obviously, Chase dies in it, which was another moment for Sarah that was so good.
That was great.
Okay, so the doctor and Chase are fighting inside the composter. The doctor gets out and is trying to pull Chase back out while Chase is struggling and trying to pull the doctor back in. Sarah's freed, except her arms are still bound, so the off switch is just out of her reach, and she's doing everything she can, practically dislocating her shoulder in order to try to turn it off to save this guy. And when she can't, the look on her face, the anguish. I mean, it only lasts about 10 seconds before they move on to the next part of the story.
And even Tom Baker
she got to do
behind her saying, like, I was trying to grab him, and he was trying to pull me in. I was trying to save him, and he was trying to pull me in.
Right.
It was a great little moment. Yeah. There was a lot of those little, really good scenes. The scene with, what's it? Not Sorby? What's his,
Scorpion.
Scorpion. The scene with the scorpions and the guy with the forks over his eyes. There's no one like you. Remember? No, but her, Sarah Jane and him, when they had that scene about whether or not the doctor was going to come back and about what it is to be sort of a good person, and you almost have a moment where he has a choice. Well, you do have a moment where he has a choice to do the right thing or to think about himself, and he chooses himself, and he ends up, ending up in the water, right? He's running
he gets
through,
sucked
and then
under
all
the
of a sudden
water.
He's in the water, and he gets taken down by the planes. But there were so many good scenes of characters working through their stuff. It was not just monster chasing and fighting.
Right.
It was a very human story it was just so well put together.
Yeah, I agree. I thought I don't know who did the incidental music throughout, but I really enjoyed the music throughout this, including the synthesizer, obviously. But just the music throughout just really set the tone. I don't know why it just really caught my attention in this case. Maybe it's just coming from these earlier seasons where it was, as we're kind of jumping back through here, that there was a lot of kind of stock music. I really enjoyed it.
Let's talk a little bit about the casting, though. Like, do you know, or did you look up why the Brigadier's not in this? Because they reference the Brigadier.
Yep.
He tries.
But he was in Geneva.
Is that true?
Well, that's what they said. He was in Geneva, so
No, I mean, but the actor,
but why?
Was he doing something else, or was there just
No, this is the last unit story. I think they said it's the only one where none of the established other unit characters were present.
And it seemed a little odd because it took me like, is this person a unit person, or we're just dealing with this weird department in the UK that's all about plant life, and what's the connection? And then they he literally does try to get the Brigadier, and he's not available.
I think from what I read, they said there just wasn't enough in the story for Unit to warrant bringing back any of the Brigadier or any of the other characters from Unit. So
it didn't matter. We had Harrison Chase, and that was enough. And his just putting blood in his gardens and playing that.
Yeah, that's not how a composter works. You don't just shred it and spit it out into the yard.
He does.
I mean, I guess he does.
He's got a special machine.
I mean, obviously it's working because the grounds. I love that as an environment for them to not only set the tone and of the entire place, but there's so much action that goes on in there as they're trying to escape and getting chased around both by the monsters and by the goons with guns. Just the grounds of the place was such a nice setting. So between that and then you have the completely different setting of Antarctica. There's just a lot going on.
The settings, I think, the first two being that prologue, and then the 4-parter. The fact that they were in such unique locations really made it not feel so dragged out. I mean, you could have just had that first story as a 2-parter, and it sort of would have worked. I mean, you had a lot of things going on. You had one there's 2 pods, so you fight the first pod.
That one blows up at the end, so there's the...
you had... It worked perfectly.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I can't even remember what I was going to say. Oh, what I liked was how much detail and attention was put into the life cycle of these creatures. So we got to see how they were pods, how they then go, they
start
take
growing.
Over, a body, and then they mutate the body, and then they keep growing, and then they hit like that stage where they're going to germinate or whatever, and that's going to spread more pods, and so they put a lot of thought into the monster,
the baddie in this one. Yeah,
also and it's an old monster, right? It's a monster the Doctor was aware of. No. I mean, as far as the world goes.
Yes, the Doctor is aware of them. He suspected that's what it was to begin with when he saw the photographs, and when he went to see it in person, he knew that's what it was, and obviously seemed to know a lot about the fact that they travel in pairs and how they work on the planets and take them over. What I was going to say is, when I was reading about this, this story wasn't supposed to be the finale. But
was it Hand of Doom?
It was not Hand of Doom. It was... Oh, now you're putting me on the spot. I don't remember. Everyone shout it out at once because you know at home what it is. But because of script plot problems with the next one, they moved this up. That one they had booked the camera equipment and post-processing to be able to do the chroma key, so they could do insert backgrounds and whatnot. So that allowed them to actually create the much larger monster than they would have otherwise. So it is kind of cool because you don't really tend to see monsters that are the size. What do you say? St. Patrick's Cathedral is how big it's going to get, and it is huge, towering over the entire mansion and sending its tentacles inside and breaking through windows and everything. That was really cool. It wouldn't has been nearly as effective, I think. A monster had it just been a twice normal human size being, but the fact that it got so huge and was knocking down the cottage and basically the size of the entire mansion was pretty cool.
I love that too.
The creature effect wasn't awesome, and it was fine. It was a guy in a big rubber suit, which was one of those knocks that you always get.
But I did like when it became. You could go genre to genre with these things, but when you're in the house, it very much felt like a Night of the Living Dead type.
Yes.
You're in a house and you're trying to board up the walls, and then the plants are coming through the windows and everything. I thought that was cool.
There was one moment where they tell Hargraves that they have to board up all the windows on the first floor, and he's just very nonplussed about it. As you wish, sir. He just goes and walks away. It's like, okay, you do see what's going on here.
I did see in some looking up that this is also shot on video. I don't know if you could tell.
Outdoor
the
video.
Exteriors were video as opposed to being film.
Yeah,
which is,
but it was pretty effective. It didn't look like it was the cheaper video that you see later. So this was pretty good. So the culmination of this to take down the creature is to call in an airstrike, which I thought was an unusual thing for a Doctor Who story. I don't know
why, because they had that footage of the airplane shooting the missile that they could just play 3 times
over and over
for each blast.
It would have been nice had they taken the middle one and just reversed the footage, flipped it the other direction.
Oh no! And then it blew up the plane. Yeah.
But I mean, it's not like that's not a typical way that you would defeat a baddie in a Doctor Who story. It's usually something much more he's using his wits to outsmart him or whatever. I don't know. It worked and it was fine. It was just unexpected to me. They had brought out the laser beam to shoot the monster, but that for some reason just didn't do anything to it. So blowing it up with the missiles was the way that it ended. It's just unexpected. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, that whole they're getting the lasers right, and the flashing lights. That was
right.
That effect wasn't that good.
The effect wasn't good, and it did go on for several minutes of them shooting it, and it didn't do anything. But that was fine.
It's all good.
What else we got?
I just liked it so much, Dan. I didn't take that many notes, so shame on me.
You were too into it.
I mean, but Baker did wear a chair on his head at one point. Like, there's parts in this story that are like that are so crazy. Yeah, there's one scene when they're in the... I believe it's the Sarah Jane and the Doctor have already figured out that it's connected to the millionaire.
Right.
Harrison, right? Mm-hmm. And then they go to the corrupt guy, and they have that meeting, and there's like a cut, and the Doctor's got the chair in his head. He literally has the chair over his head, and then he walks over and puts it down.
I don't recall that, but that's
watch
wonderful.
It again. Yeah, I will find a still of that. But it's just
I'm going to make the GIF, so I'll make sure I get that one.
Like, it doesn't really, but it totally works.
Yeah. I mean, everything he does in this just works. I mean, there's moments when they're in the cottage, and they're the first time that the Keeler monster is gigantic, and they're in the cottage, and they got trapped in there, and we have the moment between the Doctor and Scorby. The plant says, if you send out the Doctor, I'll let you live. And Scorby's like, yeah, that's a great plan. Let's just send him out there and save ourselves. And the Doctor just has this moment of, just completely shouting at him and freaking out. Like, what are you doing? Of course I'm going to, just that whole moment. He being able to jump between, it's just Tom Baker being able to jump between comedy and the emotion like that in a way that is convincing and not at all... even though it could be over the top, he makes it work.
No, I think that's why he's the perfect Doctor for me, because he can be serious, deadly serious, and intimidating, and also disarming and charming and funny and witty and all of those things.
And pretty.
I love that the flower monster had a little dinky flower coming off of it. Like, it had its own little thing,
like
just
a lapel.
hanging. It was like the saddest little... green thing with a little folded up piece of cloth that was supposed to be a flower. It was not a good looking costume.
No, it wasn't a good looking costume. The fact that it just felt
when
like
you saw it close up,
that there were stagehands on the floor just rustling ferns, like that was a little bit.
This story could have went south easily. I mean, like the M. Night Shyamalan movie where they're being chased by the wind. I mean, you have
The Happening. That's one of his best.
Where literally, like you're saying, people are shaking trees and they're supposed to be scared. But it kind of worked. I like the idea that
it was because their performances, I think, carried it.
Yeah.
It's the overall idea and the performances, even if some of the execution, like shaking a fern, on its own really wouldn't work that well. But yeah,
it's a plant's world, man.
It's a plant world. I think that's it. I don't know. I got nothing else to say about it except it's super fun.
I feel like I liked it too much to even have anything to say about it. I just like Scorby was such a good actor, and we talked a little bit about his arc, which was really interesting because he does become a quote unquote good person. I mean, he's throwing the Molotov cocktail and like he's buying time for people, but he's always invested in himself, like everything.
And that was his undoing at the end.
Yes,
was that
and that's what was so good about it.
Could have stayed with them and helped, but he tried to make a break for it and got drowned by vines.
I mean, it's a sad story too.
It's a lesson for all of us.
The renegade botanist, whatever that guy's name was, like his end is that scene where he's changing and he knows he's going.
Right, is
horrifying. Like that's like a Cronenberg body horror moment of the shoot. And then when he sees Sarah Jane and he's like, "You got to help me," and she's like, "I can't help you either," and he has got nothing.
Yep,
and he's dead.
Yeah, there was.
And then he gets shot.
A
with
bit
missiles.
of psychological horror going on there.
Yeah, and then so what's the deal? The first scientist introduces ultraviolet radiation on it, right? Or he puts it under
a lamp and it's sucking up the ultraviolet.
And that sort of, and then the next one they inject it with fixed nitrogen,
as you would with a plant. They were just like feeding it plant food, basically.
Right. So it was just sort of, I don't know if so there's nothing more to it than them wanting to say fixed nitrogen versus
What I did
sunlight.
like about the pod effect, the way that it opened up on its hinges and then that tendril came out of it, especially the very first one, we're in Antarctica and that happens to the first scientist. Very Alien, the movie looking, but this is so far before that, which is pretty awesome. But it is exactly that sort of effect of it kind of peeling back and opening.
What year was this? This is 76?
Yeah. 76, yeah. So Alien was 79, I believe.
Yep.
So that was pretty cool. And that first effect, especially of the tendril coming out and wrapping itself around the arm, was particularly effective. I really enjoyed that. So even though there were moments like a man in a big rubber suit, then there were these other technical moments that were just perfectly executed, I think. Pretty cool.
The makeup was great too when you were human, like when you were still a human and you saw like how you were being infected by the
it was
creature.
almost like plant boils.
Yeah, it was very cool.
Yeah.
Oh wait, I forgot. What I also wanted to talk about is more of the horrifying aspect of this.
Okay.
How great was the scene in the prologue, the first 2 chapters, when the first guy is infected. And they're looking at the I forget the character's name, and they're like, "You got to cut his arm off."
Oh yeah, that's right.
And he's like, "No, I don't. No. I don't. This is not what I do." And they're like, "This is the situation we're in. There's no help. Help's coming, but it's shut down."
And the doctor's even like, "You could try to cut his arm off. It might not even work. It might just buy us a little time." So it's not even like you do this and we're going to save him and save the Earth. It's like, it might not even do anything.
That scene was great though because that would happen and he was the most qualified to do it.
Right.
But then he didn't have to because then shortly later he gets killed.
Right. Well, he kills people and then blows up. But yeah.
No, I mean the guy who's going to do the cutting.
Oh, he gets
killed.
Right.
Like
he gets
hit in
killed
the head,
by
right or something.
Right.
And he meets up with the guy. But that was such a
when
intense scene. Of like your friend, like they've been living together for I don't know how many months in close confinement,
right?
And now he's got to cut his arm off,
right?
Like that's
that's a good point. I'm glad I remember that. That was pretty good.
Good stuff.
Very good stuff. Well, Eric, we're not the only ones who seem to enjoy this.
Do we have feedback? So I guess we're done.
Got feedback.
We have anything you want to say?
No. I think we covered it. I mean, this is it's easier when there's a lot to like dissect and ding about a story as opposed to one that we just enjoy. It's hard. I mean, you could just keep going back. Remember that part? That's so fun. I mean,
I think what you're saying, Dan,
is
it's
fun.
easier to criticize than it is to compliment, I guess.
Yeah, it's true. We complimented the crap out of this story.
I'm just saying.
Complimented the crap.
You can riff for hours on when something's terrible.
So let's see. We got some. Thank you for the guys for the impromptu or last moment feedback. Like I said, we are recording this way early, as you know. So on Twitter, Victoria Chambers says, "This is one of my favorite classic Who episodes. Love watching Tom Baker straight up crash through the ceiling to save Sarah Jane." Yeah, pretty cool moment. Like I talked about last time. In Inferno, that we have Pertwee being an action hero, and who decided that man could be an action star? But Tom got to do the same thing in this, and he has many other times too. But that was straight up pretty awesome.
But he always looks like he can't believe he just did the thing. Like he's like
right. A little startled.
He's trying to be confident and Tom Baker
James Bond like
the opposite.
Yeah, there was the one moment that. The doctor grabs, I think it's Scorby, grabs him by the head and twists his neck, and you hear a snap, and he drops to the ground. And did you have the same moment of like,
crap.
Oh
my God, he murdered that guy.
He just murdered him. You see him later just getting up, and he just knocked him out. It was just straight. They just shouldn't have used the now standard spine snapping sound effect for that. Instead of just kind of like done a sleeper hold on him. But that was really startling and felt very strange. If he had actually straight up murdered someone in cold blood with his hands, I'm not sure how I would have felt about that. But that didn't happen, so it's okay. We got some more feedback from Uncle Beard on the Twitter saying, "I wish we had seen more of Scorby, Jim Chalice, after this story. He's known in the UK for a comedy role. To see him being nasty To be starting over.
Come on, Dan.
I wish we had seen more of Scorby.
Yep.
John Chalice after this story.
Good job.
He's known in the UK for a comedy role, so to see him being a nasty git in this is great. I love it when the henchmen get to do more in stories.
Yeah, this is. I think we've said it multiple times. What a well written tale
and cast.
I have feedback as well, so when you're done, or if you want to let me know when to go, I will go.
I will let you know when to go. I got the rest of the night here. Daniel Smith also on the Twitter says, couldn't get past episode 3, so I need to rewatch it. From what I did watch, it was okay, but nothing outstanding for Doctor Who, since I feel that a lot of the stories during the 70s felt a bit too similar. There was not enough change in how the show was produced. Okay.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, maybe
slightly different take,
this is my favorite period, so maybe I just like
right.
the same thing. But I feel like this was much different than Brain of Morbius, which preceded it.
Yeah.
I don't really know many stories that were structured in this way that felt so separate but together. Like, I don't remember really having a 2-part prologue like this that fed into a bigger story and it was all part of the same serial.
Right.
That
I
could
don't
easily
either.
think of.
Apparently, there was
what about this one?
Apparently, there was a rumor that this was originally a 4-parter and that the first 2 were added later. But that is a rumor. It is not true. It was always supposed to be 6 parts.
It was a good choice.
But that just speaks to the fact that it really could have been those self-contained stories almost. Let's see what else we got. Our friend Harrow the Hound says, Hinchcliffe loved riffing on old horrors, so it's great that 1951's The Thing from Another World gets a great Who treatment 6 years before Carpenter's 1982 remake. Feels a lot like a Troughton Base Under Siege story, and this eco-conscious tale recycles crinoid costumes from the Axons. So
yeah, I completely agree. And that thing, love that that movie, The Thing.
There you go.
But I never saw the original, so
No, I didn't either. Just John
Carpenter, because that's where we're coming from.
And I think that's it from the Twitters, unless I missed anything else. But I think that's all of that. You said you had some feedback
on Facebook,
to check out as well.
We've got some feedback as well on this particular episode. So Harmony Haven Soap Opera writes, one of the best classic Who serials. Tom and Liz are in excellent form. Chase chews so much scenery, I'm surprised there's any left when he's finished. Yes. Scorby is fantastic, 3-dimensional character, completely agree. Definitely in my top 10. Cliffhanger to episode 3 is the one of the best in the series history. Now, I don't remember.
I think that's Sarah Jane getting held down when she's captured. She's possibly going to get infected by the plants.
Okay.
It's pretty cool.
P.S. How happy am I that you're both continuing the podcast and going back through stories that you missed? Well, thank you. And then there is an animated GIF of Brad Pitt from Burn After Reading. So,
good.
There you go. Next up, so thank you for writing that. Mark Inslee writes, am I supposed to be saying people's last names? I don't know how this works.
I don't think it matters.
It's
sure.
Fine. Privacy. You guys all check that accept box. I absolutely check your terms. I absolutely love this story. If I were introducing someone to Classic Who, this is one of the stories I would use. I think that's a good plan. It is one of the few stories of 6 parts which doesn't feel too long or drag in parts. The pacing is excellent. I think this is down to the story being a 2-part story and a 4-part story put together. Parts 1 and 2 dealing with and resolving the situation in the Arctic base, and parts 3 to 6 dealing with the plot in England. That change of location really keeps the story feeling fresh. Well, you, Mark, if you ever want to replace me as host, I feel like you're hitting all of the points that I made. This story has one of the strongest and most memorable guest casts. I particularly love Scorby, played by John Chalice, of Only Fools and Horses fame. And I also love Harrison Chase's avant-garde synth tunes. See, Mark is replacing me. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Yeah, we did, Mark. And,
we loved it.
You and I are on the same page on a lot of this. Okay, Jeff Waddle writes, easily in my top 5 Who stories of all time. Maybe because it's so unlike any other Who. And I agree with that. And in your face, previous writer who said it was too much like the others.
You can only have our opinions.
It's much more like an Avengers story, and I don't mean the superheroes. Harrison Chase is camp and wonderful as the villain. Just
So
a
campy,
pity
I
they
love that.
couldn't get Nick Courtney as the Brigback. That would have just been the icing on an already scrumptious cake. Well, thank you, Jeff.
Agreed.
Yeah.
And we do have one email to read, and it's particularly about this story about the show in general. But you sent us an email, so we're gonna read it.
Read it.
This is from our friend, our new friend Mike. He says, "Hello, I started following your show on Twitter a year or so ago, mainly for the gifts."
Oh, look at you, Dan.
I know, reeling them in with the gifts. Then they have to sit through and listen to us blabber. But finally started listening to a couple of episodes, starting with Vengeance on Varos, and then your new Inferno review. In parentheses, Inferno might be my favorite Pertwee episode. At first I was annoyed because it's clear you guys don't know the old show at all and can't even pronounce
All right,
names
well, hold
correctly.
on. Can we just pump the brakes?
Why not? Why?
Because
This is great.
you and I have been doing the show now for 4 years, and we keep
have
saying
81.
we keep saying like, yeah, but Dan, like Eric and I, if I'm you or Dan, that we're new to the show, so we
never
it's
say
like,
that.
But at this point, we probably have watched more Doctor Who than most people.
Yeah,
Like
but
we're
not
coming in
but-
on 4 years of Doctor Who. The point is,
I
we
know.
just don't. We like to watch it and talk about it, and not.
That's it.
have
That's
to
it.
write
There
it.
are so many. Obviously, there's so many podcasts out there that are exhaustive about all of the
Right.
backstory.
But I just
and,
imagine, like,
and
our
the continuity, ins and outs. We literally watch a story, talk about it, and then immediately flush it out of our brains, never
Right.
to think
It's
about
for
it again.
years of whatever you want to fill in the blank.
I'm gonna.
But it's going to be like our 10-year anniversary. for
We're
the show.
new
We're
to Doctor
"Well,
Who.
You know, it's the first time I'm not really familiar between the Tom Baker. You understand there's a Tom and a Colin.
But go on.
Wait, how many doctors are there? Okay, so going on with this fair and accurate
Yes.
response to our...
You want to write us in. We like
Totally
it.
fine. Totally fine. At first, I was annoyed because it's clear you guys don't know the old show at all and can't even pronounce names correctly. But
Oh, I like
the
that.
more I
but-
listened, I started liking the format.
Hey.
I watched most of the old shows numerous times. It's interesting hearing a perspective of people who have never seen them before. Thank you. You certainly catch aspects of the show that I missed, probably because I was 8 years old with the first time I watched it. Not because we have 8-year-old mentality. That's fine. Not exactly attuned to subtlety, and my impression of the show is probably colored by that. I'll attribute your failure to remember Joe Grant's name to authenticity. I remember Joe
You
Grant's
do.
name.
I'm sure I probably do.
Just the one
I
time.
can't remember people's names that I've met like in the last 10 years. So if
I
just can't. I
make Eric put on a name tag before we start recording so I can constantly refer to it.
I just constantly call people man, regardless of gender.
Chief.
It's a terrible thing.
For the first few years that Eric and I worked together, he just called me buddy. So that's fine.
Yeah.
He can't remember anything.
That's like the secret origin story of Doctor Who we can do, because I actually interviewed you for your job at the
did.
company. Remember that?
Yeah, you did. Yeah,
I think
you
I
did.
asked you what flower you would want to be if you could be a flower.
Would've been a
I think if I asked somebody that now, I'd probably get fired.
Probably.
It was like the worst. I can't imagine what was in your head, like interviewing at that company, and then I was sitting at the other end. I don't think I asked you any questions about front end code. It was just like, so you like Mr. Show? Like it was.
The rest is history.
That's fine.
Finishing up here, I probably need to listen to some other some of those other podcasts about Doctor Who show to compare. But for now, I'll give you a solid 4 out of 5 stars. Keep up the good work.
That's very kind. Thank you. And forget about that.
And lastly, he says, and if I'm honest with myself, I'm probably just hoping this review gets read on your
Yeah,
show.
done.
And it does.
And to
Done.
reiterate, while I did say we've watched 4 years worth, we are still watching shows for the first time. Like I've never seen Seeds of. I was
Doom.
about to say Seeds of
Doom
Death.
Death.
Seeds of
Deathy Doom Dooms.
We have a new iTunes review, unless you have something else.
Sorry, let's just do
Oh,
one quick
geez.
last email.
Holy.
This is specifically for you, Eric, I think.
Oh, nice.
Cool end credits songs.
Oh, thank you.
Our listener, Mark, says, I was wondering who chose the songs to play at the end of your podcasts.
That's me.
That would be all Mr. Eric doing all of the editing on the show. I'm guessing it's not that easy to pick a song that relates to the episode, so just wanted to say there's some great choices, and I've discovered some songs I hadn't heard before thanks to you. Parentheses, I wish I had an evil twin. There's a world going on underground. Brilliant work, guys. Can't wait to hear what you've picked for the next episode. See ya. So, Eric, how do you go about picking the songs?
Some stories are easier than others.
Sure.
Some it's clear and they're obvious, and other ones I have to think about for a little bit. And sometimes I think the connection isn't always completely obvious, but there's usually some thread between the story and either something we say, like you and I say, that triggers it, or it's a thing in the actual story itself.
This is the 81st actual story that we reviewed. I think in all that time, maybe I've made 3 recommendations of songs for the ends, and I think you maybe used one of them.
Yeah,
because you were going to use it already anyway.
I will say this too, because of my memory issues, there's been a couple times where I nearly used the same song again, where I was like, "Oh, I'll just use this one," and then I have to look up like, "Oh, I used that already on." So
should we just do a Spotify, flippity fly, Spotify or Apple Music playlist?
If you want to do
that'd be kind of cool. No, I mean it'd be interesting because I don't. I started
set one
putting
up
in them.
YouTube. On YouTube, some I think it was Chuck had written in and said he would like the music or wanted to know if there was a list, and I had put together, and you can still find it on YouTube. Outro was like the old Doctor Who show account outro music, and I gave up doing that. Like
what I meant to say is, shouldn't some of our fans go together and put together? That's what I meant to say.
And if you're asking our fans to do something, I have noticed that when I'm watching these classic Doctor Who stories, that sometimes I will open up the Wikipedia page, and I will see character names. Or when in the beginning when I'm reading what year it came out, what all that stuff. A lot of stuff I get from Wikipedia. And at the bottom of every entry of a show, it has a collection of reviews and like what people thought of it.
Oh, sure.
In the broadcast and reception section. And they always quote, sometimes they quote AV Club about whatever a reviewer said, or a lot of times they always quote Paul Cornell, who is a Doctor Who writer and comic book writer, whatever. He had a discontinuity.
Yes.
Yes, guide that they quote. There is no reason why what we say could also be put in here as feedback, since we are now covering just about all of these.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure if you pulled some of my lines and actually put them in print, it may not look as nice as Paul Cornell. But
I think
it's
a review by the old Doctor Who shows is a lot
I'm not
of
saying you have to do that or you should do it. I'm just saying you should do it and you have to do it because
if you don't do it, we'll stop doing what we're doing.
That's what it's for. That's what it's for.
Yeah.
Are we done?
Eric, you said we had something important.
Listen, if you had a frown, it's going to get turned upside down right now, because this one comes from BB Bronx. BB Bronx. This was from July 28th, so just a few days ago. They must have heard me complaining about the 2-star review that we had gotten just prior. Enlarges the world around Doctor Who. 5 stars.
5!
Eric and Dan, that's me and you, are masters of pop culture and put classic Doctor Who in perspective by giving the show context both from the time the episodes were made as well as from right now as fans watching the show.
That part.
They don't delve... I can never
pedantically.
Sound it out.
Do each letter at a time.
I'm the writer into the show's history and continuity, but instead give a fresh, real-time take on a great classic show. I also really enjoy the deep friendship shared by these two lovely guys. That is a super nice review, so thank you, BB Bronx, wherever you are.
Bronx!
May you have sweet, pleasant dreams this evening.
Or whenever you choose to.
Yeah, I don't. You sleep during the day. I don't know. I don't know what your schedule's like. All I know is you're good people.
And we love you. So you can be just like BB Bronx and put a review on the iTunes store in your home country. We'll eventually get those and be able to read them on the show. You can catch us on Twitter at TODW Show, on Instagram at the same place, on Facebook at TODWS. You can send us an email to the old Doctor Who Show at gmail.com, or check out the show page at theolddoctorwhoshow.com. That'll have all of the individual stories, the reviews, the audio files are there, as well as the GIFs for each one, many more than what show up on Twitter. You think I put a bunch on Twitter? I put about a quarter of them that I make are on Twitter. The rest are all on the show page there. You can see what we have coming up next, which is Kinda.
Yep,
We're
not
doing
kinda,
Kinda
and I'm
next. We're kinda
being
doing
real
Kinda.
good about not saying kinda, and I can't wait for it. I'm very excited for it.
Very much looking forward to that. So that is next. And if you wanted to, send us a physical good, that is a thing you could do as well. Eric, if someone wanted to send you a package, where would they send it?
Well, I don't remember it offhand, Dan.
It's
but
a
thanks
P.O.
for-
box.
P.O. Box 2131, Red Bank, New Jersey 07701.
That's the
Yes,
one.
I should
in
get
the
that
US.
tattooed
and
on my arm.
I think...
Yeah, I think that's
That
it. I mean,
is it.
we've pretty much
We did
pleaded at the end more than normal. So I won't tell you
about the same as normal.
I won't tell you to share the link and tell your friends about the podcast because whatever's
should
happening
do.
is actually working. Because when I do search the podcast now, we are moving up on those iTunes rankings. If that makes
Which
you
is
feel
really
better
all
about
we want
yourself.
in the
Yeah.
world. Yeah. Thank you guys for
All right,
listening.
yeah, that's enough.
And,
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
They keep us apart from the other kids. They try to keep us from each other. We're no good is what they say, but we just see this world in a different way. We're bad, bad seeds, bad, 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 bad seeds. We're bad, bad seeds, bad, 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 bad seeds. They make a lot of rules. They tell a lot of lies. If we don't wanna, we won't behave. And they can't make us 'cause we can't be made. We're